The Democratic leader.
I appreciate friends of the Republican leader cheering for all the great things that happen here in this Senate. But the facts are that look at any political scientist, anyone that watches what goes on here in Washington. You add up the number of bills passed, the nominations confirmed in this Congress. Congress is well below anything in recent history. In addition to that, we've had more revotes. That is voting on the same thing over and over again with the same result than in the history of this Congress. Not this Congress, but Congress ever. So I appreciate his trying to make things look good. I hope they get better the next couple of weeks because we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we have so much to do, and we could accomplish a great deal if we finish the highway bill, elementary and secondary education. We did the tax extenders. We did the omnibus spending bill. That would be terrific if we could get those done, but we only have a few days to get them done. Madam President, our nation is stunned following last week's wanton murders at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, Colorado. That heinous attack left 3 dead, a police officer, a mother of 2 children, and an Iraq war veteran. 9 others were wounded. Sickening that these innocent victims were gunned down in cold blood in a medical clinic during the holiday season. More casualties were averted due to the quick and heroic action taken by responding law enforcement, as well as a courageous bystander named KRL Stewart. This Iraq war veteran I just mentioned heroically exited the building to seek help, and while he was doing that, he was killed, murdered. I can only imagine the heartbreaking anguish that the victims and their families are experiencing. I know it's of little comfort, but the Senate mourns with them. Our thoughts are with them, their families, and the first responders who brought an end to this brutal attack. But we in the Senate should not fail to see the context in which this vile assault took place. Last summer, a right-wing group began unleashing a series of heavily edited videos with unsubstantiated allegations. And since that time, Republicans in Congress have made it their mission to push these unsubstantiated allegations every chance they get. They're actually baseless. And they also have made it their mission to defund Planned Parenthood, which would irreparably damage this health care providers' future. Republicans have insisted on votes to strip Planned Parenthood for its federal funding on 2 different occasions. Neither was successful. But they're still trying. Republicans want to stop Medicaid reimbursement for Planned Parenthood, among other things. Republicans are also leading politically motivated investigations of Planned Parenthood. The Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jason Chaffetz, has admitted that he's uncovered no wrongdoing in his investigation of Planned Parenthood to this point. But always willing to play a bad hand, that hasn't stopped House Republicans from allocating $300,000 of taxpayer money to fund a new politically motivated special subcommittee dedicated to investigating Planned Parenthood. Republicans shouldn't waste their time. I would hope that they give up before they match the millions of dollars, last count's more than $5 million, they've wasted on the so-called Benghazi, let's get Secretary Clinton committee. Another politically motivated and untimely, fruitless attack. We should never forget, 1 in 5 American women will get care from a Planned Parenthood clinic at some point during their life. Cutting off access to important health care services like breast and cervical cancer screenings and contraceptives is bad for women and bad for the country. In the wake of this act of domestic terrorism, I commend Planned Parenthood for refusing to allow threats and violence to stand in the way of its work to ensure women have access to care. I hope everybody understands that I stand with Planned Parenthood. But we as leaders must be mindful of our words and our actions. Whipping people into a frenzy of hate and anger while providing them with easy access to firearms has proven disastrous to our country. We have a responsibility as leaders to think very hard about what we say and do in this context, and what are the consequences. We have the responsibility to find ways to stop this violence. Democrats are working on reasonable gun safety proposals that will help ensure firearms are kept out of the hands of people intent on committing violence. It's appalling how many times I've had to make this plea. This terrible event that took place in Colorado just a few days ago is already off the news. Why? Because it happens so often in America. It's appalling how many times I've had to make this plea, but I say to my Republican colleagues yet again, join with us in passing sensible gun safety reforms. Help us keep guns away from people intent on using them to slaughter innocent people. First, we must do something to close the loopholes that allow FBI terrorist suspects and other unhinged individuals to legally buy AK-47s and other weapons. Right now, a terrorist suspect, someone that's listed on the watch list, can walk into a gun store or a gun show and purchase sophisticated assault weapons. To leave that loophole unaddressed is sheer recklessness by congressional Republicans. Someone on the terrorist watch list can walk in and buy a gun, any gun they want. That's not good. We must also strengthen our nation's background check system. We're failing to flag and prevent people who are mentally ill or who have violent motives from illegally purchasing weapons. Improved background checks are essential in keeping guns out of the wrong hands. What we're saying is someone is a felon, a criminal, or crazy. They shouldn't be able to purchase the gun without a background check. And they should never be able to purchase a gun, period. Finally, we have to close loopholes and allow people to illegally traffic in firearms. What does this mean? Right now, we have no laws in place to adequately prevent individuals from purchasing weapons, buy huge numbers of weapons. And then what do they do with them? Sell them at a great profit, transfer them to criminals. Example, a person with a clean background can purchase an unlimited number of guns and then turn around and sell them to a cartel, a gang, or terrorist organization with no threat of prosecution. Fortunately, as in the past, Republicans are nowhere to be found when it comes to implementing these common sense changes to our gun laws. For example, the Colorado Springs murders. Did we hear a single Republican running for president of the United States stand and say, we have too many guns, can't we stop this? I haven't heard a single Republican senator come to the floor and say something about this terrible event that took place. Instead, they're busy fear-mongering against Syrian refugees, those fleeing Assad and ISIS. We have a rigorous screening process for when we accept refugees. The refugees we're accepting are women and children, older men with families. Less than 2% of men are of military age that come as refugees from Syria or Iraq. And the Department of Homeland Security has verified that not one of the 1,800 Syrian refugees already admitted to the United States has a single confirmed tie to terrorism. But in spite of all the facts, Republicans would focus attention on refugees and ignore the problem we have with gun violence in America. Republicans would have Americans believe that Syrian refugees are the preeminent threat to our national security. And meanwhile, the Republican Congress is doing nothing to curb our nation's gun violence. It's really a sad commentary on Republicans that they're more concerned about keeping Syrian refugees out of America than they are keeping guns out of the hands of terrorists and those that are mentally ill and are criminals. As we speak, in faraway Paris, France, 194 countries are gathering in Paris to negotiate an international agreement to address climate change. Fortunately for the world, President Obama is committed to doing something about that climate change. And I send all my appreciation, my accolades, to the French people for going ahead with this extremely important conference and not let those terrible acts that occurred stop them from doing so. Because of Obama's leadership, the United States is taking on a more prominent role in rolling back dangerous carbon emissions, not only from our country, but from China, India, Brazil, and other major sources of climate-changing pollution. Before the conference in Paris even started, more than 170 countries representing over 90% of global carbon emissions made concrete pledges to to reduce carbon pollution. Climate change is among the most serious problems we face today. What does the Pentagon say? What do all the security agencies say the most serious problem facing America today? Climate change. We're beginning to endure the devastating consequences of rising sea levels, extreme weather, and drought across America and all over the world. No country acting alone can halt climate change, but through American leadership and international cooperation, we can protect our air and climate for our children and their children. I commend President Obama for his work domestically and internationally to address this issue. This year is quickly drawing to a close, as I mentioned earlier, and that means the Senate has precious few days left to finish vitally important legislative matters, and it's not a small list. Before we leave this year, we need to address funding to prevent a government shutdown, a surface transportation bill, elementary and secondary education conference report, important expiring tax provisions, including those for the middle class, not just for the big corporations, and a growing backlog of nominations, particularly those involving national security. Each of these matters I just mentioned are essential. We've got to get them done, and we don't have a lot of time to do it. There's certainly no time for demagoguery and political distractions like repealing Obamacare or defunding Planned Parenthood that have been the hallmarks of the Republican Congress. Instead, I hope my Republican colleagues will work with Democrats to accomplish all of the Senate's work in a timely fashion. Senator McConnell and I have finished our remarks. What now is the business today, Madam President?
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.